Hello everyone, welcome to the third and final episode of the HIVE-33 webinar series. HIVE stands for High Impact Virtual Engagements, and 33 signifies the 33 most essential questions to consider when organizing your virtual meetings. I'm Pakarinen from PFMD, and with me are Elena Balestra from EPF and Sean Baulk from GCO Global. This webinar series is brought to you by PFMD, European Patients Forum, and GCO Global, and it's a mix of pre-recorded content and live Q&A. So please use the questions function to comment and post your questions. And just to recap really quickly before we start today, in episode 1, we talked about basic and speaker questions. Episode 2 was about the experience and participants. And if you missed these, the recordings are online. So now let's continue with the remaining 3 topics that we have. Elena and Sean, over to you.
Thank you very much, Shi, and welcome back, everyone. My name is Elena Balestra, and I'm Membership and Capacity Building Manager at the European Patients Forum, and we do represent the voice of patients in Europe.
Hi there, guys. Welcome back for the last episode. My name is Sean Baulk. I am a project team lead at GCO Global Conference Organisers, where I oversee a group of project managers who look after multiple events, hybrid, virtual, and face-to-face throughout the globe.
And thank you very much, Sean. And this is our actually last episode. So we will dive into more technical questions for you. So ready to receive a shower of questions today as well?
Yeah, still recovering from episode 1 and 2.
Yeah, but I'm sure it will be fine. So, Sean, we used for the past 2 webinars and for this one as well, the Circle of 7, which is your creation actually with your team. Can you tell us a little bit for the people that didn't participate in the first 2 webinars, what you are referring to with the Circle of 7?
Yeah, no, definitely. And apologies for anyone who's watched episode 1 and 2 for the third time of recapping this. But, you know, for the people that might be watching this for this first time, I think it's just useful to know. Yes, this is a process I put together with my team in order to help better guide our clients through the strategy of organizing their virtual meeting. So we came up with these 7 pillars. As you can imagine, you know, the main pillar or the starting pillar will always be the basic starter questions, which we covered in episode 1. However, it is important to remember, and I've said this in the other past episodes, is that these pillars are, you know, not uniform in the sense that you don't have to do them in a particular order. So, you know, as you see them there, it doesn't have to be basic, starter, then presenter, then experience. As we all know, events are very organic things, and they kind of, you know, happen, things happen as they happen. So, you know, if you're not ready to have talk about your speakers and beginning strategy, but you've got a lot of your content or you know, your experience pillars down, then of course focus on those first, and then, you know, come back to pillars that are available later on in the process.
So, Sean, we now focused on technology, a very important part of virtual events and virtual gatherings. So we have a set of questions for you that we should all ask ourselves while thinking about technology for our online gathering. First, does your technology fit your strategy or your needs? Sean, what do you want to say about this?
Yeah, so this is kind of how I always start off with clients when it comes to technology, and what we tend to do is a little bit of a best practice when we begin the journey on choosing the event platform and any other related technology around the event. So the first kind of 3 core questions we get clients to ask is, okay, what is your must-have functionality? So these are the things you have to have for your event for it to happen. Okay, so the core functionality. Then we kind of look at what is nice to have functionality. So this is not, you know, this might be not imperative, but beneficial if you had it as part of your event. And then, what is your wish list? So, in a perfect world situation where you have no limitations, what would be the Rolls Royce of your event in terms, of engagement tools, and platform? After this is done, we tend to propose the following with our clients is, do a full exploratory meeting and fact-finding session with the relevant stakeholders, because of course, what you might think as a nice to have, they might think as a must-have functionality. So it's good to have those conversations with each other before moving forward. And then once you've had that conversation, it's good to do, multiple demos, because of course you might have come across 2 or 3 different platforms that you like. And I would tend to ask some of these key questions. So pricing, system requirements, vendor support, administrative rights, and reporting capabilities. Those are probably kind of the top 4 or 5 questions that I would ask, just in the beginning when you're dealing with these particular platforms.
No, absolutely. And I think the support is really key overall if you don't have a lot of IT knowledge within your organization, right?
Correct.
Okay. So next, always on technology. Does technology need to integrate with other existing systems?
Yeah, so that's a really interesting question, and something that doesn't, we kind of touched on in episode 2 about integrations. So, this is how I look at it. So 1, there are internal systems that you currently have that you could benefit by using an integration. So a popular example of this would be, as we discussed in episode 2, like a registration platform that you potentially use within your organization, or even a project management tool that would be useful for streamlining process in correlation with the virtual platform that you're using. The second one could be tools on your list that you do not currently own or have licenses for, but you would like them to be integrated into the platform for the sake of the event. An example of this might be, an additional engagement tool to enhance the user experience. So something that falls outside of the standard product that your virtual platform owns, and you license something from outside to integrate with the platform that you're moving forward with your event. One thing to be quite clear on is, don't necessarily accept, the first answer is the only answer when it comes to integrations. There's a couple of different situations that I've had recently where, the client went with a particular product, and then there was, a bit of controversy about the fact that certain things didn't integrate. But once we had some conversations, and the main conversation was actually with the account manager of the platform, they introduced us to the development team, and the development team were able to kind of make it happen. Just to be aware, though, a lot of these platforms do have development teams who are constantly developing the app to make it better. And what you will find is that sometimes on their development roadmap, some of the things that you want align with the ones that they have. However, sometimes it doesn't. So if there's something specific you want, you might have to pay for it to be for the integration to happen. The other thing to think about is there are third-party apps that can combine the two. So there might be there's a couple of well-known applications that we use that are able to actually combine your virtual platform with the application that you're looking to use. So a couple of different things there to think about integration, but I would definitely say, look into it deeper. Don't just accept what the integrations say, potentially on the homepage of the website of the platform that you're looking at. There could be other options out there.
So don't be shy and ask.
Yeah, exactly.
So what does your interface or display look like for the user? So from the user perspective, so how would you want to, how do you want your event to look like for the participants?
No, this is a good question to ask, because to be honest with you, I've made a couple of mistakes in the past with this, and assumption is the mother of all evils, as my father used to say. So what I would say is always make sure that as a meeting organizer, you're looking at the end user experience, because what tends to happen is the back end looks very different. So that the meeting organizer POV is very different to the end user perspective. So as you're building your site, or as someone's building your site, you might not be looking at it from an end user perspective. You might just be seeing the organizer perspective. So what I would tend to say is, test the functionality as a participant multiple times through the process, because also what tends to happen is if you leave it right till the end, you leave yourself a lot of pressure trying to fix all the mistakes that you weren't picking up during the creation process. So that's that's really important. And then a little side note, that's specifically in terms of like kind of a desktop-based functionality, but don't forget that some of these virtual platforms actually offer phone applications, so phone-specific apps. And these are also, it's really important to go check the phone app and make sure that it correlates with the desktop, because what I've seen in the past is we've developed the desktop application, and of course it offers the ability just to copy and paste onto their app, but sometimes the functionality, the formatting, it doesn't correlate directly over. So you will see things not in the place that you'd like them to be. So keep that in mind when you do have a phone app and a desktop application for users to use for your virtual event.
Yeah, and what support is needed for your organization to make sure that the event will be a success?
Yeah, so, when we talk about support, I think what tends to happen is everyone starts thinking about the specific tech support. So, what happens if everything crashes? And that's, a very important part of it. But how we tend to look at it is we break it down into three parts. So the first part is the obvious one that I just mentioned, is the platform support. So who will be your contact for all things webcast or virtual platform related? Is this someone who, will be around to handle the frequently asked questions for your participants? Will they be there to, be able to troubleshoot when, maybe people can't connect, or there's, a drop in connectivity? So that's, very important to have that discussion, because sometimes, platform support needs to be paid for separately for your live event day. So don't assume that it's just part of the package. The other support is who will be supporting the recordings of the session. So, will this be someone internal? Internal, as maybe it's you, the meeting owner, or maybe it's someone part of your audiovisual team. I think it's very important to note the distinction between the platform support and the AV support, because the platform is essentially there to navigate you through the technology and support you through the technology, but they're not there to record your sessions. So in a lot of cases, I've had meeting owners go, oh, aren't they going to be recording my sessions? That's not what platforms do. Platforms just facilitate the technology. They leave it up to you on how you want to record it. So whether you want to do that yourself or use a professional AV team, it's purely up to you. And then the third, and I think, one of the things that sometimes gets, left till last in terms of just thought process, it normally does get integrated, but it's normally last on the list to think about. But this is actually the support from the event side. So, people that are going to support, participants through, what's happening on the agenda. Oh, I didn't understand this about a particular handout, stuff very specific to the meeting owner and the organizer's perspective. So really make sure that you have a medium or way of communicating within the app that can support these type of conversations as well, not just the technology.
Yeah, what it would probably be a sort of a reception in a face-to-face event, right? A place where you can go and get the information you need during or prior the event.
Yeah, I mean, we've done it in a couple of different ways. You can either, of course, the simplest way is just to provide an email. I'd say this is probably the worst way to do it because it takes you out of the application. The simplest way to do is, if you have a chat room functionality, is maybe try and create a help desk chat room. That's probably like the cheapest and most affordable way of doing it. And then just have someone monitor it throughout the day. So if there's a team of you who are organizing the meeting, take turns looking at the help desk. And it's probably the most efficient way to quickly communicate with people without having to come out of the application and detract from the actual event that's going on.
How does the platform record and store my events content?
Yeah, so I think this can be taken for granted sometimes a little bit. And to be honest with you, in terms of nowadays, most webcasting platforms offer robust recording options. But I think, one thing that I can say is kind of a top tip to think about is, kind of the stop, start, pause functionality of the recording. So these tend to kind of mix and match depending on which platform you're using. And the reason why I say this is especially in pre-recordings, I think I've mentioned this before, we did one recently where we did about 126, 130 recordings. And once we started the recording, there was no functionality to pause and carry on. Once we started, you were in. What made that especially tricky was the fact that, there was tight timelines. So there was only 45 minutes to do the recording. So if you can imagine, 10, 20 minutes just to get, familiar, speak to the AV team, get yourself ready, and then half an hour maybe to perform the meeting. In this case, it wasn't too much of an issue because the meeting owner actually quite liked the fact that the pressure was on the speaker to get do it in one take, because of course that can be challenging as well, taking more and more takes, and we've spoken about that before. But yeah, just keep in mind the stop, start, and pause functionality, because it can be detrimental to especially your pre-recording process. When it comes to the storage of your content, we kind of touched on this in episode 2 a little bit, but most platforms offer hosting capabilities as part of their contract. Make sure to read the terms and conditions. I don't work for any specific platform. I'm independent, so I would always say to check the terms and conditions of what that hosting agreement is. Also, be very clear on whether this hosting agreement can be extended, because what can be the case is that they only offer it for a certain amount of time, and then after that there's no recourse to extend, and this could be the only place that you're hosting your event, and you have no recourse to show it anywhere else. So another thing to be very clear is if they kind of have a long-term hosting plan that you can buy into if needed. And then something we touched on episode 2, but I'll mention again, is also just make sure that you understand how to pull the sessions from the application afterwards if you do have somewhere else that you want to host it from. So somewhere where you can pull the MP4s from so that they can be used for on-demand content in other places in your organization.
Yeah, it is a very tricky one. What type of security is required and the access needs?
Yeah, I always feel before answering this question that I should say I do not offer legal advice regarding security and access needs, but what I can do is kind of give you a few pointers in terms of overall security and access. So one of the security things that people don't think about is the protection of their content. So what I would say is, it's very important that you protect your content by hiding your URL, either using a virtual event app or using a meeting-specific platform rather than a webcasting tool rather than a meetings platform. So, for instance, when I say a meetings platform, we use MS Teams within our organization. It's very easy for someone to kind of press record during those sessions, even if they're not the organizer, record the content and then be able to freely distribute it later on. So, really think about the control of participants within the platform that you're using, because I don't think people protect their content enough. Protecting your participants is also, kind of part of it as well. So what we would always suggest is kind of a few top tips for people to remember. Do not accept, unsolicited chat requests from people that might seem, suspicious or might be asking very funny questions in your direction. So, don't just assume that because everyone is on the platform that they all have everyone's best interests at heart. Especially if it's a free event and there isn't a lot of registration process to get in. Don't ever give out your email address to other attendees or any other personal information. Like I said, this is information you should be giving your participants just to make sure that they are aware that you would never ask them to give that information freely. And then I would say refrain from sharing your screens, with fellow attendees if you have kind of, group sessions or one-to-one, unless it's been pre-organized, with the meeting owner and it's kind of part of the program. And then finally, and I think which is probably most importantly and pertinent to what you're asking more regarding the platform and the security the platform should have. Now, this is kind of an interesting conversation, and I've spoken to you guys about this before, that you can get really involved and it can get really deep. But I think for the meeting, the purposes of this call today, or this meeting we're having today, I'll just mention two things. Okay, so there's two security guidelines for platforms that are kind of industry standards that you can kind of check with your the account manager who's selling you the product. One of them is SOC 2 Type 2. Now, this is not a certification. This is an audit, like an audit-based system where they audit and show robust policies against security, availability, processing, integrity, and confidentiality and privacy with the platform. So an external person will go to the platform and do the SOC 2 Type 2 audits, so they can say that they follow the SOC 2 Type 2 processes. So I think that's quite robust. Just to mention that there are some other similar audits to this. So if they don't have this, they might have something similar as well, but this is kind of the most well-known one. And then, of course, one thing that we all probably know in Europe is GDPR. So make sure that they follow, robustly the GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation, which is obviously, as we know, a European regulation. And that it's part of their organization. So if they can give you very quick answers to these without really flinching, I think you're okay. They might give you, they might even give you, additional security protocols that they have in place, but this could be platform specific. I think one other thing, is, to check with them how many times they are checking their security internally. So, doing systems checks and making sure that they're warding off against any kind of external attacks. So they'll normally be able to tell you how many times a year they're checking for checking their systems for these type of online attacks. And like I said, I think if they can give you a robust answers to those questions, I think you're okay.
Excellent. Now, I think we covered quite a lot of ground on technology, and now we're moving to the new session dedicated to content. Ready, Sean? I'll let you breathe for a second.
As I'll ever be.
First question on content. Is your content suitable for virtual consumption?
Yeah, we've talked about content quite a few times in episode 1 and 2, so apologies if it's kind of a little bit of a recap in some places. But in a presentation, the audience is really concentrating on listening to what the presenter is saying. So they really have little time or brain capacity to devote to understanding the slides. For that reason, slides should have like one clear, simple message that the audience can understand at a glance, allowing them to focus on the speaker's words. So we've spoken about, this before, is, really, concentrate on the audio, what you're putting out from yourself rather than, very a busy slide. So a few top tips is, clustered slides confuse the audience because they don't know where to look. If the presenter says, as you can see from the picture, and there are 5 pictures on the screen, the clutter is diluting the message and, distracting from the audience. Avoid text-filled slides and also use bullet points sparingly. I think sometimes people think bullet points are helpful, but I think they are if you use them, 1 or 2. But if you have 20 bullet points on one page, I consider that clutter. Visuals, help store information in long-term memory. So be careful to choose images that link strongly to your point of view. And then also, we've talked about this before, avoid animations unless it's an absolutely intricate part of the presentation. We've talked about animations within PowerPoint before and how this can sometimes not translate through the platform.
Has your content got the right amount of engagement?
Yes, so we've also touched this on this a little bit as well from time to time in the other episodes. So here I really just have some top tips for the audience today. So one, make sure, and we've said this before, really make sure the content is relevant to your target audience. As discussed in the last question, really make the visual compelling. As per what I mentioned before. Add interactivity. Try to get your audience, at least to touch their keyboards every 3 to 5 minutes. It can't always be done because of the type of presentation that you're doing. But if you can aim to get them to at least touch their keyboard every 5 minutes or interact every 5 minutes, that's kind of a good goal to set for your presentation. Try and use, where you can, multiple presenters and maybe add moderation to heighten the conversation. Try and incorporate storytelling then rather just facts and figures during the presentation. So as you can tell, I kind of lean on telling you stories of times that I've dealt with other clients, because I think this puts things into perspective. I think sometimes we can get really bogged down into the zeros and ones and not kind of give the story behind the actual information. So and especially I presume in the patient world that there's a lot of really strong stories out there that can translate nicely. Try and use presenters with personalities. I know this can't always happen this way. So we've discussed this before about having speakers that don't necessarily translate well onto virtual in episode 1. However, if your speakers struggle with virtual presenting, maybe think about hiring a professional moderator who can really assist in engaging the KOLs or the subject matter experts, with the audience. Where possible, you can add music. I would say mainly not during a session, but how we've used in the intros and outros for these episodes. I think it's just a good way to kind of snap people into interaction. But yeah, of course, if there is a way to introduce music in a natural way during your presentation, then do so. And then quite simply, you can add gamification to your event, so things like leaderboards or quizzes.
We don't have music, just for disclaimer for our participants during the presentation, please. Next question for you. Is content already developed that can be repurposed for other situations?
Yeah, so I want to be kind of clear on this. So this is, this is a problem that we tend to find with a lot of our clients. What they tend to do is they kind of start from scratch every single time. So they're trying to reinvent the wheel every single time they do a presentation. And for those that are doing a lot of meetings throughout the year, and especially when the content is fairly similar, what I would tend to try and say is, really try and repurpose the presentations and the branding and the agendas that you're using throughout the year, so that you don't have to every single time start from a base and build it back up. In the case of one client that I have, they had a particular meeting that that they wanted their audience to interact throughout the year. So what we did was we set up a hosting platform or virtual platform as the main site, where people could join throughout the year. They would have a login, a registration. However, all the branding and the agendas tended to tended to stay the same. So the branding on the site was the same. The agendas didn't change from event to event too much. The only thing that did change was maybe the core content in some places, and even then, some of the sessions were rehashed because they needed to be for later down the line in the year. So, you know, give that some thought. If you especially if you're running something where you want interaction throughout the year, that's a good way to repurpose the products that you've already created.
Yes. So, have you promoted the content effectively?
Yeah, so I'm not going to go too deep into this because we've talked about this quite a few times before. But essentially, what I'm trying to say here is, you do all the hard work. You produce this beautiful piece of content that's taken you, maybe weeks, maybe months, maybe even a year to develop for your event. And then you don't, market it or promote it in the right way. So, we've discussed this before. I mean, minimum time to promote your event should be 3 weeks out before the event takes place. The bigger the event, I think that marker moves further and further away. Of course, make sure that you're doing kind of all the promotional steps. We've discussed this before. Do a save the date. Do 2 or 3 reminders, and maybe also, and we discussed this in episode 2, use the content as a way to promote itself, right? So take excerpts of the content and promote it through teaser videos on your social media, whether that be Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, or whatever platforms your organization are using. Use little snippets of the content to kind of gain interest and make people, aware, and even maybe start creating forums for discussion that can help with the Q&A further on into the event. So yeah, just make sure you promote the content effectively, because I know the amount of time that goes into creating content, these particular episodes included. So it's really good that it's very important that we promote it effectively.
Yeah, it happens often, mainly in a small organization, in my experience, that you put all the energy in making things happen, and then you just forgot to let the world know. So I fully support and agree with you on this step. You're too tired then to let know the world what you've been working on. But yeah, that's a complicated and difficult step. Moving on, we close the session on content, and now we're getting to the really techie and admin a bit part of the circle of 7, but really important one, the reporting. So you can brief, the event has happened, you've done well, but now you have to report back to your donors, to your members, to your team, for example. How to do that? And we have obviously some questions for Sean. Does reporting need to be exported to another tool? Sean, what do you think about this?
Yeah, so this is something to really think, and the reason why I put this as the first slide, because when we do the next question later, it'll become obvious. This is really a pre-planning conversation. There's so many times where the thought process, the analytics are there, the platform produces analytics, the client's happy with the analytics that are being monitored. However, no thought process has been, how is it going to export and how is it going to integrate into any other tools that you need to be able to translate this to other stakeholders. I have a very good example of this is we had a client who they really want to do the registration process themselves. They had their own system in place, but they never thought about how they were going to export the registrations from their tool and then input it into the platform. And even though this is not necessarily to do with analytics, it can be the same. So in terms of, say you have raw data that you want to input into a system in your organization, and you haven't thought about how the integration is going to work or how much work is going to go into formulating that raw data, it can lead to a lot of manual work. I've seen a few events where that's happened, and hours and hours and hours of work has been done in formatting Excels and programming in a way so that they can talk to the systems of the organization. So really give it some thought in the pre-planning phase. Don't just take it for granted that everything will work out, at the end.
Absolutely, and I can testify, I did it myself. I had to take screenshots of graphs on a platform to make sure that I had all the reporting material I needed, because I couldn't download those. So don't do the same. It was really annoying. What type of reporting analytics is necessary for the type of event you want to organize?
Yeah, so this was kind of an interesting one because, of course, everyone's different, and everyone wants certain things are important to others, and so on and so forth. So what I really wanted to do here was kind of do like a top 10 of analytics. So the things that I noticed are being requested a lot or important to meeting owners, especially through these last challenging 8 months, where people have been converting face-to-face to virtual and trying to gain information about how these virtual events are working, and are their programs as successful as they think they are. So I'll go through them. Some of them are fairly straightforward. So, number one would be number of registrants. So this is the number of people that have registered for your virtual event. This number is commonly used as an immediate way to determine the event success, right? So we all go like, okay, great, we had 1,000 people register for our event and we only needed 800. So this is a pretty straightforward one. And we've also discussed before about, not letting that number fool you in episode 1. I think we discussed it. So if you're interested in why, go back to episode 1 and take a look. Number 2 is number of session registration. So of course, people register for your event, but of course, sessions are also quite important within that analytics. So this is the number of people who registered for a particular session at your virtual event. For this information, you can determine which speakers you would invite back, maybe just due to their popularity, or maybe it's the content that was really popular. So you want to make sure that you keep that for the next time as well. I won't go too deep into this because we've discussed it before, but then, demographic attendee information. We talked about demographics in episode 2, so I'm not going to go too much into that. The next one, number 4, would be the email open rate. So an email open rate is the percentage of emails that recipients who open the email you sent, open the email that you sent them. For conferences and professional events, we tend to say that on average, 23% of people open the email that you send them. For general events, the average is about 26%. So what we do recommend for this particular analytic, if you want it to be on the higher end of the spectrum, is always to try and make sure that in the subject line, it's a little bit more personal. So like include their name. This always helps. Number 5 is the email CTR. So CTR stands for click-through rate. Your CTR is the percentage of emails, the percentage of email recipients who click the link. So this is, they've opened the email, but have they actually clicked the link to register for your event? So you'll probably find the correlation between the email open rate and the CTR are very different. With the CTR, you'll probably find the average click rate is more like 4.95% or 5%. So yeah, people might be opening your emails or getting your emails, but they're not necessarily registered. So I think this is a really the CTR is a really important one. So even more so than the email open rate. Then number 6 is speaker and session engagement via a live polling. So due to speakers and planners not being able to engage with their attendees due to virtual events, it's really kind of hard to notice body language, facial reactions to the content. So really diving into live polling, and how people are engaging with that polling. So are people actually engaging with it? Are they clicking on it? What kind of answers are they giving? Can really give valuable feedback, moving forward for your events. Number 7 would be social media engagement. So this is the number of total reactions on your social media that your social media audience has had on your posts. So these are like shares and retweets. Number 8 would be your social media mentions. This is pretty straightforward as well. Number 9, and really importantly, is the attendee satisfaction survey. So an attendee satisfaction survey. This is a planner's opportunity to ask guests specific questions about the virtual event to ensure that you can utilize the data to understand and improve future online events. Be sure to be specific, to have specific questions that can be answered by selecting a numeric option. So the reason why I say this is some people want you to give a handwritten answer, and let's be honest, people do not have time to do it. It never happens. And I've had this debate a couple of times with clients, and I've pretty much won it 99.9% of the time. It can be because of your audience that they will write in, but most of the time they will not. They will want the easy, click of a button. Okay, this was a 9, this was a 6, this was 7. That being said, you need to be very specific about the questions that you ask when you do the numeric. So it cannot be too generic. Otherwise, you don't get the the direct answer that you're looking for, the specific answer that you're looking at. So I would say rather ask more questions with numeric rather than trying to get people to answer via a chat functionality. And then finally, this is not necessarily available for all platforms, but there's what we call an NPS. So this is a Net Promoter Score. So this is essentially generally works on a scale of 1 to 10. And what it does is it aggregates how popular your event was using all the analytics for that specific event, and rounds it up to either a number of 9 or 10 being super successful, 0 to 6 being kind of more detractorous. And people not enjoying as much. So, if your platform offers an NPS, I think that's a great way to kind of sum up the overall feeling of your participants for the event. And that's my top 10 tips for reporting and analytics. And I think you'll probably tell me that was the final question of the day.
Exactly. So you survived also to this shower of questions, Sean. Now I think it's time to hand it over to Chi.
Thank you, Elena and Sean. Wow, what a breathtaking amount of considerations that hopefully have been really, really useful for everyone who's watching our webinar series. So let's see what questions remains with our live audience today.